Hello, my friends, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Today, we are going to go through and look at the various reviews about Black Myth Wukong. Why, you might ask? Well, because there's a stark difference and probably not as bad as you would think, though there is some interesting tidbits to be gleaned. I'm obviously not going to read through each and every one. I have already scanned every one of them for a general idea of what the takes are across the board. On Metacritic, it currently stands at an 82, and that is on 54 critic reviews. I haven't gone through all 54 of those reviews because there is no way that's happening. I'll put it that way. So the big story here is the reviews that are mentioning the IGN article that basically claimed game science was sexist, exclusionary, whatever, made a bunch of really sexist remarks, and I've already made a video on that. And while those remarks might be considered sexist, personally, I don't consider them sexist. There is a severe issue in the world currently, and I won't lie, I fall prey to this thing all the time. When you state a group and a member of that group hears it, if the member of that group who hears it doesn't agree that it applies to them, they'll say, well, not everybody. For an example, women want to see themselves in video games. Well, I am a woman, and I have no desire to see myself in video games. When I have to hear about how terrible women are in video games, it makes me very angry because on one hand, I know they're right. And on the other hand, I try to be as not terrible as I can. So it's kind of irritating. I mean, all I want to do is I want to playing games and have my fun and enjoy myself and hang out with my friends, get myself killed in some 7 Days to Die, kill some zombies, whatever the fuck I am doing. That's what I want to do. I don't want to change the game ecosphere to make myself feel more included because I include myself quite handily, thank you very much. But of course, there are far too many people who feel the need to change things, and of course then they have their little friends that feel the need to help them. That said, we're going to take a quick stroll through these and talk about what they say very briefly. These are all the articles I found that do not contain any mention of inclusivity, diversity, or the supposed misogynistic comments. Now, to start things off, the number one surprise is, of course, IGN. IGN was not the first to create that article. They are one of the ones who ran with it, so I would have genuinely expected to find a mention of it here in their review. Somewhere. Not in there anywhere. But they do say, despite some technical issues, Black Myth Wukong is a great action game with fantastic combat, exciting bosses, tantalizing secrets, and a beautiful world. Well, that is something you will hear repeatedly. Across the board, it seems everybody agrees that the world they've created is absolutely gorgeous visually. Here on GameSpots, they say Sun Wukong's magical abilities are wonderfully adapted to the game's combat. An unusual combo system ensures that its fast-paced combat doesn't quite feel like anything else. Boss battles are frequently stunning and force you to make full use of your repertoire. Environments are gorgeous and varied. The bad is, the story assumes you have knowledge of Journey to the West and is tough to follow without it. The level design is simple and dull, and the enemies are too scarce. On this one, noticed that there are some people that saying that is very disrespectful to the culture, and I saw one comment that was quite interesting in that it said when Asians play a game and they don't understand the story, instead of bitching about it, they go and learn the lore. And I have to agree with them there. If you are playing a game and for some reason there's excess information for you to find out about it, go do it. Oh my God, you have to learn something. That's terrible. I'll never understand some things. But they gave it an 8. These are in no particular order. Game Rant gives it a 3.0 with incredible boss fights. When combat clicks, it can be a lot of fun. Stuffed with content for people willing to look for it. Delivers on spectacle. Combat starts to feel restrictive, however. There is no map. A few agonizingly difficult bosses, unfortunate technical hiccups, lackluster level design, especially in the early chapters. For Games Radar, they gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Fun, dodged, focused combat, incredible world and atmosphere, loads of secrets to find. The cons are combat can get repetitive, annoying level design, and minor stuttering on the PC. With strong combat and a fascinating world that mostly rewards exploration, Black Myth Wukong is a fun action RPG that feels like the modern God of War games, viewed through the lens of Chinese mythology. Pocket Link gives it a 3.5 out of 5. Visually stunning, tons of bosses, unique transformation system, scarce story and lore outside of menus, early game feels limited, and poor tutorialization. WCCF Tech. It's an 8.5. Pros are great visuals and soundtrack. Fun combat system with plenty of interconnecting mechanics. Excellent enemy design. Balanced difficulty that may get a little too low at times. With combat focused and limited move sets, the experience gets stale after a while, and then this person had stuttering issues on their PC. Now this is IGN Brazil. And the reason I had IGN Brazil pulled up is because I'd sort of assumed that IGN would have mentioned the controversy on their site, and I also assumed that they then wouldn't mention it on the Brazil site. However, they didn't mention it in either place. Basically, here they have scored it an 8.5, whereas regular IGN scored it an 8. It says, has everything it needs to be a contender for Game of the Year 2024, despite its technical flaws. The well-told story features interesting characters, but it's not brilliant, which leaves the room for the excellent combat to steal the spotlight, with great boss battles and a spectacular variety of enemies. The game is an admirable invitation for players to learn more about the rich Chinese mythology. Inven gives it a 9.0. Now this is translated from Chinese, just for the record. Such beautiful visual, great bongsul fun dojitsu, various monsters, bosses, and hidden elements, a charming story adapted from Journey to the West. The negatives are ambiguous questline pathfinding, battles with ups and downs, small finishing touches. The impact of a normal attack does not use a gauge. I'm sure you're seeing the pattern here. Stunning visuals, great world design, interesting bosses, some technical issues, repetitive combat, and one that doesn't get mentioned a lot, except for I think on 2 of them, is that there is no in-game map. There is some comments on the performance of the dubbing and the cutscenes, the acting feeling wooden and odd. There is also mention that it's not technically a Souls-like. It's kind of Souls-like. It's like a Souls-like, but it's not a Souls-like, if that one makes sense. Here you see here the lack of an in-game map at a 10. This is another Chinese site. It says international top-level picture, artistic expression, huge amount of game content, profound interpretation of Journey to the West, and the negative is level designs lack some polish. There are quite a few mentions of the technical issues. And interestingly, while on one hand you have criticism for lack of diversity, you're also seeing criticism for the fact that there is too much Chinese lore and it's not being explained enough to everybody. Because obviously, everybody needs to have their hand held and very carefully explained to them, as opposed to, I don't know, going and reading a book or just doing some research, or just playing the game. But the lowest score I have seen for this game is a 6, and it still says great graphics, great game design, solid story, some fun spells to use, but the combat feels repetitive, exploration feels pointless, and they don't like the leveling system. And those really are the general complaints. I mean, if we're going to break this down generally into a group of pros and cons, the pros would be the graphics are amazing, the combat is interesting, the enemy designs are good, the music is good. However, the level designs can be weak, especially in the beginning. The combat can feel limited and repetitive. And I imagine a lot of this will depend on how somebody plays. Now for the meat and potatoes of what we're talking about. You'll see here that PC Gamer gave it an 87. Black Myth Wukong blossoms with an eccentric cast of characters and expressive combat, all wrapped up in the rich world of its source material. And here is the aside. Last year, an IGN report described in detail a history of sexist remarks from game science leaders. The studio has declined to acknowledge the allegations in recent interviews, and while I don't find anything within the game that reflects an extremely regressive view of women, although there just aren't that many in the game, the behavior tarnishes what would otherwise be an effortless recommendation. And that I don't get. Is the game fun? Yes. Okay. Do you think women would play it? I mean, this person seems to think the answer is yes, because what the game science guy said was that they can't cater directly to women because that's not really their audience. Really, I prefer taking gender out of these things, but that's a long conversation for something else. And of course, you have the one currently going around the internet like crazy, where Screen Rant gave it a 3.0 and decided it lacks inclusivity and diversity. And I do not understand this. What kind of inclusivity are you looking for? Oh wait, never mind. I know the answer to that question. The person who wrote that doesn't want genuine stories. They don't. They want stories that meet a checklist. And we've had this conversation before. If you're writing to a checklist, you're not going to write a good game. You're not going to write a good story. Instead of telling the story Game Science wanted to tell, these people want them to go into their story and make up new roles or change roles to add people that don't necessarily belong in the story. Here we are. Here is their largely lacks inclusion and representation. While my analysis and review of Black Myth Wukong remains focused on gameplay, it's important to mention the controversies surrounding the game's studio and the reports of misogyny and sexism from developers. Playing as a female gamer allowed me to notice issues surrounding inclusion and representation. What do you mean playing as a female gamer? What? You're playing a single player game and you're... Okay, hold on. We're going to finish reading. As far as chapter 1 and 2, while characters are clearly fictitious and fantastical creatures, there were no females or feminine NPCs, enemies, or bosses present. The only exception, if you can call it female, is a boss named Mother of Stones in chapter 2, which is nothing more than a still glowing rock with no abilities being guarded by other enemies. So what? So what if there weren't any women? Was the story still good? Was the gameplay still good? Was the battle? I mean, that's... Okay. The lack of diversity and inclusion resonates with the misogynistic comments reported to have been made by developers, which expressed disdain for women playing their games. They did not express disdain for women playing their games. They expressed that women are not their general audience because... by and large, especially at the time the comments were made, men were the majority and really still are the majority of the audience. Yes, women play games more now, but we're still not as much of the market. Not unless you're playing some games with your numbers. And that's okay. We don't have to. And it's okay as long as we can find games we enjoy. Although Black Myth Wukong does have truly enjoyable moments, the underlying feeling that women aren't welcome in this world felt present throughout my gameplay experience. That's because you were thinking about it. It's because it's so much on your mind that you feel the need to project it in spaces where it doesn't belong. It's worth noting the game is based on the novel Journey to the West, which does consist of a few important female characters. To not include any women or to only include a few in an adaptation meant for modern audiences is quite disconcerting. However, if you do your research, you find that this isn't based directly on the book, but after the book. While this doesn't take away from the exhilaration and fun of the boss fights themselves, women fans of Souls-like games may have a different perspective, especially given that according to reports, the developer also suggested that women aren't capable of enjoying or being skilled at these types of games. Well, as a woman, resident woman here on the channel, I disagree. I do not feel in any way like I would not be included in this game. I do not feel that anybody would have a problem with me buying and playing this game. And I'm reasonably positive that were I to play the game, I wouldn't feel like I was being told to not play the game while playing the game. In the end, the best color is green. And I don't mean me, I mean money. Though I am also awesome. They don't care if I buy the game and play it. It's a single player game. Nobody cares except for me and them. Well, they kind of care because they want my money. If I give them my money, they're happy. They don't care if I play the game. They don't care if I have tits. They don't. They just want my money. It is that easy. Did they make a good game good enough to get my money? I'll be honest. This isn't a game I really think I'll probably play. Not because I don't think it's for me. I like Souls-like games. I enjoy Elden Ring. Someday I will be able to beat Bloodborne. I don't know when that day is, but it'll come someday. I will try. And nothing stops me from playing anything. I don't care if the developer, for whatever dumb reason, said women can't be good at that. And realistically, that's not what he said. And here's the thing that gets me, is the irony behind this sentiment is that Black Myth Wukong is among the easiest Souls-like games and may have overestimated its ability to hang with them in terms of difficulty. While thematically and stylistically it undoubtedly falls under this category, it does not quite fit the bill in the technical skills required, such as is achieved by games like Elden Ring, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, and many more. And this part, so the whole not diversive or inclusive is that there aren't enough female characters in the game. And the reason that matters is because of comments that were mistranslated. What, was it years ago? It was like in 2014 or some shit. I would have to go back and watch my own video to remember. But this whole thing this whole not enough women thing, and I understand because I am a woman. Well, I am also a woman, and I reject your bullshit here. I do not go into a game looking for other women any more than I go into a room looking for other women. Well, maybe she does that too. Other women in a game, or women in a game, female, feminine characters are not required in a game for me. They're just not. They're not a necessity. Maybe for her they are, and thus this game isn't for her because there's not enough women in it. Maybe she really likes to look at women, and that's her problem, is there's not enough women for her to look at. I hate using my identity as a talking point. I really do. But the fact of the matter is when other women are out here saying things like playing as a female gamer, I also have to say, well, I am also a female gamer and I disagree. Because they use the feminine identity as a bludgeon against other people to keep themselves from being criticized. And thus I have to step in and do the criticism, which is irritating. I'm not a confrontational person. Yet here I am. To put a little icing on this cake, you see here a post from Hypnotic where he references the Screen Rant article and the fact that Screen Rant has removed the name of the author for the review of Black Myth Wukong due to safety reasons. Apparently, what she said was so dangerous in her opinion that they had to remove her name. It's distinctly frustrating to be a woman and have to watch women do these things because there's nothing I can do about them. And then I get to listen to, well, all women, to go back and visit the previous point. It's frustrating. But to move on, Tech Radar also felt the need to reference the supposed IGN scandal. They don't put anything about it in their actual rating. It's a 3 out of 5 with, superb backdrops, unique setting, fun spells. Bosses are mixed rate overabundance. At times, detail makes navigation unclear without a map. Here you are, 2 paragraphs into the article about this game, and they're talking about even it has dealt with controversy over its sexist and misogynistic marks against female players. And then finally, this PC games. This one I feel a little differently about just because I feel conflicted about it. I feel like this woman has an idea of the fact that she's a gamer and she's just a gamer to game, but felt the need to put it in. She did give it an 8 out of 10. But the first 2 solid paragraphs are basically spent talking about how Nestle once released a candy bar saying it wasn't for girls, but she decided it was for her. And she's done the same thing with this game. And I guess realistically, that's what I do with gaming. You can tell me it's not for me and I don't care because it's still for me. So I can kind of identify with this. I still don't like that she felt the need to bring it up and talk about it, but at least I can identify with the sentiment she's bringing here. So 4 out of the 22 articles I looked at felt the need to talk about this controversy. Some more so than others. But yeah, realistically, I don't feel like it's as badly skewed as we initially anticipate, especially when we hear all the time about how terrible some of these outlets are. And it could be that these other outlets are just smart enough to not mention it. I will say, if that attempt at blackmailing game science was true, they obviously failed miserably, and I anticipate this game being a pretty good success. I could be wrong, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notifications. If you really liked it, you can feel free to share it around, and I will catch you later.